On Cashew 2, the Norts have been under occupation from the planters for nearly two full generations, and pretty soon leaking into the third. The Norts are a bipedal species with a deep brown complexion, binocular vision, and a snake like form. A sleek, mostly reptilian species that are very strict insectivores. A species that should have been left alone if not for the planters' desire for a certain mineral on the planet. The planters are a bulbous, eight limbed species. The dual segmented body stands at about a 45-degree angle from tail down and head up, with its four central limbs for locomotion, and the front and back two limbs used for manipulation and, of course, for mating. They are also reptilian in their own respect, yet they are carnivorous by nature. The material they seek can actually be refined to power their vessels and is also a wonderful trade commodity. A single kilo of this mineral, once refined, of course, is enough to purchase four mates, with enough left over to purchase a full ship. Granted, it'd be a Corvette class, but still. The planters threaten to spread an insecticide across the entire planet of Cashew 2 unless the Nort are willing to mine this mineral, not using their own people, but instead enslaving the local population. The Nort are a very lean and passive species with no way to actually defend themselves against the planter ships in orbit, so they simply obey. Over time, however, the planters have found another reason to visit Cashew 2. They have found that the subjugated species, the Nort, are similar enough to their own physiology that they can be used as entertainment. To the planters, the sounds of pain that come from the Norts sound almost like pleasure to them. For a while, it was simply good enough to hide your wife, hide your young, but then they had to hide the husband too, as the planters didn't care and they would simply take advantage of anything they could simply do something with. The Norts had to simply bear the burden of forced labor and forced. Many became disfigured due to the entertainment and the work. Sometimes they would either break parts of their own bodies or disfigure their own young to make them seem undesirable to the planters. The treatment actually became so bad, even to those that had disfigured themselves, that many simply walked around as though they have no soul. Drones, simply existing but never living. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, the planters demanded 3 times production, threatening even more pain if the minerals were not delivered. For several months, the treatment of the Nort was so severe that there was not a single Nort on the planet that didn't carry scars or missing parts due to how they were treated. Then, just as suddenly, one day the planter ships just stopped arriving. They were just gone one morning. The garrisons assigned to the planet were the only ones left. That meant there was almost none. They were extremely outnumbered by the Nort, but the Nort had already been broken. The mistreatment had pretty much broken them, and some mistreatment did continue, just at a lower rate as there were fewer around. As soil was being processed to get the minerals out, there was a strange sound, a sound of thunder in the skies. Most didn't look up as they were still broken, but those that did had no idea what they were looking at. Thousands of small suns seemed to burn up in the sky, seemingly drawing in the munitions that were sent up to the skies from the garrisons. Other objects came down, spraying a white mist, sometimes a thick white mist, as though it was trying to block the vision, and sometimes a thin mist that seemed to sparkle in the sky. And something else came through. Giant metal raindrops fell from the sky, followed by ships that were not that far behind. Ships they had never seen before. Those working the mines were confused at what they had just seen. As these metal teardrops came down extremely fast, they suddenly opened a whole bunch of canvases that seemed to open up very, very wide, slowing the teardrops down, and then they landed with a very loud thump. The doors on all sides opened quickly, smashing down onto the ground, and massive bipedal machines stepped out. The machines looked like Voltron, the goddess of death to the Norts. The machine looking bipeds took a few steps out and seemed to look around, then turned and walked away. Every local was confused as they could hear the sounds of explosions in the distance, small cracks, but nothing that should actually end the entire planet. For a moment, they feared the Zoltron had come to kill them all, but the machines simply walked up to the line of Norts and walked past as though they didn't even notice. In confusion, the populations, man, woman, child, didn't matter. They came out of the mine and followed these bipedal machines. They did this even though they couldn't see the bipedal machines at some times, but they could hear the heavy metal steps on the ground. As they all reached their settlements, the Norts were just shocked. All the planters were very, very dead. Most looked like they had been torn asunder, limbs ripped off, disemboweled, decapitated, incinerated, but very few were actually shot. The mechanical creatures didn't talk as they stood around, but it seemed as though they were communicating. Eventually, it seemed as though they emptied a large area, and large ships came down as these mechanical bipeds seemed to move towards where these ships would land. The ships landed gracefully as the populations all stood and looked at these, what looked like metal bricks. In each village around the planet, the Norts watched as doors opened on either side of these metal bricks, and biological bipeds walked out, ones they had never seen before, all wearing some sort of environmental suit. As these creatures walked out, a voice in the Nort language is projected out from the ship itself from areas they didn't even know, and the population listen as they hear,
"We are humanity. We have come to liberate you from the enslavement at the claws of the planters. We do not require any minerals from you, not your planet, not your person, nothing. Nor do we desire to use you for recreational purposes. As a sign of our commitment to your freedom, please approach to heal all physical wounds or approach for food and clean water."
though the population heard this, they were hesitant until one of the mechanical bipeds seems to look around back and forth for a moment. Then it opened its helmet. As the visor retracts, the population could see the face of another one of these humans. As it walked over to a mother and child, where the mother is missing an eye and most of one of her arms, scars all over her body, mainly to her lower abdomen and legs. The child had also been beaten severely, a child that should be able to walk, but its disfigurement did not allow it to do so, as one of its legs was completely out of its socket and clear evidence of abuse. The man in the exosuit holds out one hand, motioning towards where the other humans are, as he reaches behind the female with his giant metal hand and softly pushes her forward. She goes up, even though she is petrified at what's going to happen. The medics reach out, all calm, never speaking, but they reach out for the child. She hands the child over, thinking it's going to be sacrificed. She cries a little bit as they place one child inside one of the pods, and then they motion for her to get into another one right next to it. They close the pods, and the population can see inside as the scars seem to disappear. The limbs seem to pop back in place without any pain. The arm that was gone regenerates completely. And when it's over, in just a couple of minutes, the female realizes what's going on as the pod is opened. She comes back to herself, but as she opens her eyes, she realizes something. She reaches to her face and realizes that her eye has even been regrown. At that point, there's absolutely no question if these new arrivals wish to help. As some get healed, bowls of dried crickets are served along with bowls of dried grubs, which the population devours with gusto. As the population is shown such kindness, they wonder something about these humans. They wonder why the humans in metal suits are grabbing a hold of small items from the dead planters. Eventually, one of the younger of the Norts actually asked why they did that, and the humans simply reply, war trophies. 7 years later, the planters are massing for an attack against the closest human clan, the closest human planet. It is one of the weakest, of course, but it is still dangerous. However, with the minerals that they've been able to refine from Cashew 2, they can finally power the new ships they built. With these new numbers, they can face the humans and simply overrun them before they have a chance to fight back. A simple plan, but effective. The war leader is consuming a freshly seared Nort arm, one of the last pieces that had been taken from Cashew 2 before they had to leave it alone. Looking forward to sinking his teeth into the human flesh, his mind wanders a little bit about the future battle and how new food is going to be there. He wonders if this time he can have another one that's still alive, still squirming, and one preferably that isn't too old, as those get a little tough. That is when he hears his second in command call him to the bridge under the sound of an alert. Trotting to the bridge, the war leader is absolutely shocked at what he sees there. According to intelligence, humans do not have the personnel to simply spare at all. They have the ships for sure, but they're just not able to reproduce fast enough. Yet here is a full human battle group. He's so shocked that the words don't escape his maw before the human fleet simply opens up all its weapons. Aboard the battle group's command ship, Admiral Halsey turns to his second command and says, "Continue firing until they all go dark." On his screen, he can see the planters' forces just going absolutely nuts trying to recover from the sudden attack. The Admiral asks his executive officer, "Things seem to be going so well. I doubt we're going to be getting any war trophies, you think?" The XO, a Nort in a perfectly fitting uniform, looks out at the fleet of human ships currently manned by the Nort that wanted to fight back against their former masters. The Nort reaches for a device, not even realizing he's doing it, as he simply says, "I'm fine with that, sir. I've already received my war trophy." The XO, at this point, holding up the device that he pulled out, pressed the button, and it projects a 3D hologram of the same Nort female that got her arm back, with an adolescent female standing right next to her, and in her arms, holding a freshly hatched baby. The human commander grinned. The only trophy anyone ever needs. Now, let's do them proud and show these assholes what it means to fight like human. The XO turned off the hologram, put it back, and responded, "Yes, sir. Kill 'em all." Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on this short story. Now, before I go, I need to say that today's winner is Alan Williams, with Brian Kemp coming in really close second. I also need to send out a special thank you to the supporters of the channel, and they are Prozac and Pancakes, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, MTF Guard, Julius Boone, Douglas Scarborough, Erica Gem, Guardian Sage, and Sir. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntext, punching out.